6 o'clock. It is 6 p.m. Good evening, everyone. I am calling to order the October 4th, yes, that's right, 2022 meeting of the Rutland Conservation Commission. Present in the room, Joe Dell'Aquila, Scott Langren, Skip Clark, Jared Gentolucci, Peter Crane. Present remotely is Melissa Danza, and also our trusty administrator, Tamika Murphy, without whom nothing would get done. This meeting is, as I've just sort of suggested, on Zoom. It's being recorded, broadcast, will be rebroadcast, and will be on the internet on both the video on demand service from the town and on YouTube. Done. Let us begin. Up. Let's begin with
Motion to accept the minutes of September 20th.
Second.
As written.
Huh?
As written.
As written.
Second.
Didn't give me a chance to finish it, you guys. He was keep flipping it up and down. I couldn't even find the date anymore.
That's right there. Try and follow it now. Go ahead and read. See what happens. Any discussion? Corrections, additions, subtractions, roll call.
Gentolucci, aye.
Clock eye.
Langren, aye.
Topo aye.
Dan's abstain.
Crane eye. All right. Look who showed up.
Which one?
Alrighty, so we have a request for a certificate of compliance on 12 Emerald Road. This is the property where they're asking to not replicate the wetlands. Is this the same property that you took the photos of?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Perfect.
This was the site walk on Saturday morning.
All right, so I can bring those up in just a second. In fact, I'll bring them up as soon as I can find them. Any text? Anything you want to say about this? Obviously, these look brand freaking new. Is my very first comment.
Talking about the erosion control?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in very good shape.
surprisingly good shape, perhaps.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Oh, okay.
So I did, before the site walk Saturday morning, I did just go back to remind myself of the history of this filing, because it originally was in front of us. I'm going to get some of the dates probably off a little bit. I think it was December 2020 was the original notice of intent submission. They had a box culvert
Mm-hmm.
for the wetland crossing for the driveway. It's just a single family home residential.
Right.
It's an estate lot with the long driveway.
Oh, this is the one out back.
Yes, the house
Okay.
is in the back, long driveway, whatever,
Mhm.
400-ish feet, something like that. So it was originally a box culvert, fairly large box culvert, and Mark Elbeck had come back to us, I think it was around, I'll say August, summertime of 2021, and they decided to change it to just a pair of pipes, which is what they ended up
Mhm.
installing. And at the time, that did reduce the wetland fill,
Impact, yeah.
which reduced the replication area, and we were all good with it, voted, approved, all that. So now the request is they're looking to, potentially eliminate or at least reduce the replication area. So from what I could see out there, I mean, obviously the work is done.
Mhm.
It's all 100% complete. Driveway's in, pipes are in, driveway's paved. It's mostly wood chips on the sides. All looks pretty good. I think the thing I was struggling with walking the site is, at this point with the work done, based on the approved plans, we had roughly 1,950 square feet of wetland alteration.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were proposing about 4,000 square feet of replication. The replication is in an area that would require some clearing. So there's no doubt there. Although I'm assuming that was probably known at the time because it was all pretty much woods.
Mhm.
It would require some tree removal. It would require some other vegetation removal. I think the challenge here is the wetland flagging as it was originally done. Maybe it was conservative. I don't remember. I remember we did walk the site before any work was done, but it was so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Was it conservative? Was it not? Maybe not. I think at this point, in my opinion, for us to make any changes to what's required on the approved plans, I think we would need some sort of additional information, documentation, something to show that either the area that the work was done, if it can be confirmed that that area is no longer considered a wetland resource area, which might be difficult at this point because the work is done, or if the area impacted ended up being less than what was on the plans, then maybe the area of replication can be less. I, for one, am not a big proponent of taking trees down to do replication. However, if you fill wetlands, you have to replicate it. So I'm wondering if this might be something, just throwing this out there as an idea, something maybe we revisit at some point in the near future, because I'd love to get more eyes on this to take a look at it, because I was the only one out there Saturday. I don't think there's any rush to get the certificate of compliance issued. So one thought we had while walking the site, I walked it with Mark Elbag Sr.,
Right.
is maybe we wait on issuing a certificate of compliance until we can figure out the best course of action here. And I did mention to Mark some of the options I was coming up with was providing more documentation that either the wetland line, or as originally proposed, was very conservative and maybe wetlands weren't impacted, or less area of wetlands were impacted, or are there other areas where you could do the replication that requires less or no clearing?
Well, I'll start off by, I do remember this site walk, and I don't remember thinking at the time that the delineation was particularly conservative or particularly liberal. And so that makes me think that it was pretty close,
Yeah.
you know? It's
I would
I-
agree with you, Peter, on that one. I was with you guys.
right,
It was accurate, you know.
right. So, but if they did in fact reduce the amount of impacted space, I have no problems reducing the amount of replication if we decided to continue. I did not chase down the site plan because one of the in my
Well,
head. Sorry, go
Peter,
ahead.
did they submit an as-built plan as required? This is one of our new ones, so that would require an as-built, which
Good
should
point. No, I don't think they did.
it should be a red line as-built that differentiates any differences between the approved and the as-built conditions.
Just a second. This is
I didn't see it in the drive.
because
so I'm
here are
assuming
the
not.
orders. La la la.
Anything I received from Norman would have been on the drive, so if it's not there, we didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
No, but we do have the orders to know if
I think that should have been in our timeline.
Did
Keep
DEP
going.
put any comments on this one?
I don't remember anymore. We don't have any. We don't have it attached right now.
It should be on the keep going, Peter.
I was
It's
going
on
to
the
say I'm
section.
not far enough down yet, am I?
No. It'll be a text document after the WPA form.
Oh, there is nothing here.
No, keep going. There's nothing else?
No, this is the end.
Oh, there should be an additional attached special conditions, I thought.
Maybe they didn't scan them for some reason, because they would have been issued. I would have
Yeah.
given them to them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, back to because I don't remember the site plan. I don't remember how close they are. I mean, I would assume they would replicate in adjacent to a wetland.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that getting a good calculation for how much they actually impacted as opposed to what they plan to impact can help us determine what the size of that replication space would be. Now, it also sounds like that they did a full 2-to-1.
So they did on the plan. So this was
Right,
another
right.
thing I discovered is that there is a discrepancy between the order of conditions and the revised approved plan. So the latest plan I could find, it was 1,950 square feet of impact,
Mm-hmm.
4,000 square foot replication, 2-to-1 ratio. The order of conditions, I think, still has the old numbers. Let me see if I can find that again. I believe it was 2,800. 2,800 alteration,
Right, okay.
and the order of conditions lists 2,800 replication. And actually, the original replication was 5,600. They were doing a 2-to-1 on the plans, but
Right.
the order only has a 1-to-1, and it has the old number.
Oh, so the difference is about 900 square feet.
Between what's current on the latest plans for replication and what's in the order of conditions, it's about 1,200 square feet.
1,200,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, 2,800 to 4,000.
I would say we at least just throw it back to them that we need the as-built plan and we can discuss from there. But regardless of any changes, I think we would have to make a vote to either amend or have a administrative difference to make any changes to any replication areas. And it wouldn't be through a COC.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion to do that, do we?
No,
No,
Yeah.
no, just notify me. Need a
So
as-built.
Tamika, you can send them a message about that?
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. I said. Moving on, request for an extension of order conditions. We don't need that one because that's the one we just did. So we have a request to extend the order of conditions for 240 Pommogussett Road, which is Jake Pettis's place. I know that I remember doing the walk for him. I didn't have a problem with it. I believe what happened was that the building permit's about to expire, and it was unclear that everything was right in the building permit sphere. And as part of that question, we were asked about wetland stuff, and I said he took out, and we issued an order of conditions, but that was about to expire. With COVID tolling, it expires next month. Is that right, Tamika?
I thought it was this month.
Or this month?
October 17th.
October, okay, so I'm off by a month.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, he had a delay on that getting started there,
oh yeah,
big time. So I think I would,
Yeah.
if I had to recommend something, I'd say, give him another year.
yeah, I was going to
He's
say,
gonna
what
be done.
he didn't ask for a duration. And Jake, I assume you're not connected, no one for him. My only question about doing it for only a year is that enough? If he's done,
Foundation's in, building standing,
oh, the building's
and
standing.
the foundation's been in for 2 years.
So I'm just wondering if there's any more groundwork left to do.
Probably just final grades.
Yeah, dress up.
1 year.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with that.
Worst
I
case
just
scenario
wanna
comes
ask
in
the
again
question.
and goes, hey, I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those. I mean, the major work's done. I mean, the hole's done.
All right,
So,
get a motion, please.
Make a motion to extend for 1 year.
Second.
Other discussion? Roll call.
Delco, aye.
Langer and I.
Clock eye.
Chancelucci, aye.
Danza, aye.
Crane eye. Love the easy ones. When I can work the computer, I love the easy ones. Alrighty, I'm going to open a hearing for the notice of intent for James Hussey Contracting on Miles Road, aka Millbrook Road. That's the one I'm trying to
Peter,
close.
I'm not sure if Julian is there in the room, but
Yep.
right
Oh.
after we spoke, the DEP number came through, so they asked if we could keep going forward tonight.
I saw that, absolutely. Julian did show up. So, Julian, please, introduce your project.
Piece of property on Miles Road that Jim Susi owns. It's, here's Miles Road. Devereaux is up in this area here. And it's a piece of property that goes along.
Conservation Commission?
We're in the meeting over there,
Yeah.
and we don't have any chairs. There are people standing up.
They are, in the back wall, there's a door, sorry, the back wall of that room, there's a door, and inside the door is
They got all used up. The chairs on the rack are gone.
there's more than one rack. There are a lot of racks.
We can't take these.
How many do you need?
We
Just
need
this.
about 10.
Maybe 3. Looks like we got 10 here that aren't being occupied.
Probably no one else coming home.
But, yeah, right, you've got to make sure we bring them back to you. But you say there's more than one rack.
There are 4 or 5 racks back there.
I will check.
Okay.
I'm just a unit owner. We're having our unit owner meeting there, and I don't know why everyone comes to me and says I need a chair. But I thank you
A
very much.
cheerleader, exactly. Very good, Joe. I'm sorry, Julian,
No problem.
please.
So we've got a piece of property, it's about 10 acres, almost 10 and a half acres of land. It's the backside of, over in this area, this goes back out to Main Street, and it's Jimmy's senior housing project on top of the hill. This is way down the bottom of the hill. We're proposing a single-family house, and to get to the upland portion of the property is right here. We have a stream bed here, and we have a stream bed here, as we saw on that sidewalk. So we didn't want to try to go that way, because that was way more intrusive to the wetlands and to the whole situation. So we followed this stone wall pretty much parallel all the way till we got to about here is where the wetlands veered off away. So that's our access. It's a 12-foot wide driveway, as flush with the ground as we can, but yet high enough so that it doesn't flood. We've got a couple culvert pipes just to make sure that whatever's happening now will happen later. We're not proposing, we are proposing a on-site septic that's approved by the Board of Health already. Soil tests were done and the plan was approved under Title V. We'll have a private well, and we'll bring our power and from this road this way. And it's about 700 feet from here to here. And that's the shortest, least obtrusive way to get to the upland portion of this 10-acre parcel.
Wired utilities through poles, or do you plan to trench or dig?
I really thought about
Whatever's more economical, I guess.
it. Probably a couple poles and
And
then on the
we
ground.
come off the road a couple poles. And,
Mm-hmm.
But that would be right in the roadbed. That'd be right on the edge.
Yeah.
It'd be right in the same area as the road, because that only goes down about 18 inches.
I would probably say poles until we got to the uplands
You know,
and underground.
come over to about here, and then we got room.
Okay.
So that's what we've got. We did get a DP number at 301.
Yes.
I had emailed at 3 o'clock that we didn't get a DEP number, so maybe we can continue this. As soon as it went through, boop, popped up.
All right.
So,
Questions or comments from the commission?
How much disturbance, Julian?
what's that?
How much disturbance, square foot?
It's actually 11,648 square foot of alteration. It's a pretty big number, but.
So you were unable
800.
to get permission / an easement on the other side of the wall?
We sent the certified letter that we're coming here, and it doesn't seem that,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Who's the abutter?
Lack of response.
It's the rail trail,
Okay, the old Allen Ovey property.
it's the old Allen Overground.
Okay.
So,
Julian, could you maybe go over some of the comments that DEP has and any
I could.
responses that you have to them?
We were going to do that after we do get a couple comments from the commission and from the public, and then we would do DEP. So since the commission doesn't have anything else, does anyone in the public have any questions or comments about this application? Mika's going to ask, what's the closest point to the wetlands, but I bet I see it right there.
we're in it.
It's pretty close to zero.
This one's, we're negative on this one.
All right, give me just a second and I can pull up. No, that is not what I wanted you to do.
Julian, does that amount of disturbance, does that trigger any Army Corps permits?
Nah, it's a limited project
Okay,
for a single-family home.
okay.
So it does trigger the 401 because it's an
Yeah.
outstanding water resource, so it's not just a order of conditions, we got another application, but that's what we're gonna talk about here.
Okay.
All right, so let's go through these one at a time. It appears that this lot is part of a larger 59-acre parcel extending to Main Street, blah, blah, blah. NOI does not discuss alternative access, that it could have been pursued through the property currently or previously owned by the applicant.
I did put a paragraph that there is no alternative access.
Yeah, I was
There
going
is
to
no other way
say,
to
to
get
come
here.
up from over here
It's
means
2,700
crossing this
feet.
wood.
2,700
This
feet
stream.
to Main
And
Street.
two streams.
Yeah,
I mean,
And
that's
you got two streams, and one, as you saw, is a pretty
oh yeah.
significant. We try to stay away from that as much as we could.
No, I agree with that. Coming in
So-
this way, I can't see how you do it.
It just, it's.
Well, without more.
It's too far, without more disturbance.
Nor does the narrative accurately account for investment returns associated with the development of the remainder of the property. I don't know what every one of those words means when said this way.
that basically my interpretation of that would be they say it's cost prohibitive to do this. Why is he doing it? That's an interpretation. That's how I read that. They go, why would he do this? It's cost prohibitive.
But
Which,
there's actually regs about created hardship. So the point of this comment is that if it was a larger parcel, that previous access could have been somehow provided to this particular lot without creating wetland impacts, then it's called a created hardship. And so part of that is discussing if there was any financial implications to show how it wouldn't be a created hardship.
It's
It's
That's
a
gonna
10-acre
require-
piece of property in the town of Rutland that has a large enough area for a single-family house with all amenities. Why would that be denied from a landowner who has 10 acres of property? There's no other way we can get to that 10 acres, and I know there's a part in the Wetland Protection Act that allows us to get to uplands through a limited project through a wetland. So that is,
Again, just going by the.
I think all they're looking for
by
is
the
a
site
cost justification, one against the other.
what
Why
is
this
it?
one as opposed to something else?
By not doing it?
No, I'm looking at,
no, they're saying, well,
I wanna, what are they,
I don't think that they're gonna get into whether you're gonna develop it or not, whether you're permitted to, whether you
No.
can.
no.
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is, did you do a cost comparison of this plan against a different plan with a different access? Going
Julian,
through
was this-
wetlands and crossing rivers.
so there is
and,
no other way
No.
of getting here?
No,
Was this lot part of a bigger, because they're
It
saying
was.
it came off,
Yes, it
right, so
was.
that's what they're saying.
But you
so
could never,
because this was-
even with the other parcel, you could have never got to this upland portion,
Right, no, I'm
regardless what
agreeing
you
with
did
you.
here.
Right.
Right,
So-
I'm agreeing. I'm saying
All right.
that they're explaining, they wanted you to show that you did not create create a hardship for yourself.
You didn't make your own problem.
Oh,
You didn't make your own problem.
you
have to
didn't
do
cut
with
this
it.
off
Okay,
explicitly
no, okay.
build it
Right.
this.
But I'll
He's
just
trying to
show,
explain
I'll
their
show them
comment,
the whole project, showing the whole
Yeah.
property there.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, even if you would have done that as your first lot, it would have made no
Okay.
difference to come the other way. That's what they're
No,
saying.
yeah, I was just explaining that reg
No, no, I
reference
got you.
and what the
Yeah.
financial part of it is.
Yep.
so you have to explain the mess you're making as opposed to the mess you didn't make ahead of time.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Okay, we'll get through that one. I'm sure this will all come up in the 401
Yeah.
as we
Yep.
go down.
It appears that access to the proposed replication area will alter additional wetlands that are not quantified in the NOI. I don't,
Okay, go back to the main picture.
yeah.
Please.
Maybe they didn't realize that Mr. Susi owns, it doesn't show on here, but he has access of this property here.
Yes.
So we can get to this side from Main Street to build this. They're worried that we're gonna come through here, destroy this to fix that. We're not gonna do that. I'll
Mhm.
explain that.
Right.
That's easy enough to do. we'll show he's got an easement, or he owns part of it, so.
Maybe review is required. A span or bridge must be proposed in order to comply with the 401 permitting requirements.
You guys know any bridge builders that are in town?
No, they're
I
retired.
don't know why they would, you're not crossing a river, so,
We'll cross it, I'll have to show something.
yeah.
It's a 600-foot span bridge, so it's like Key West.
Yeah,
Perfect.
pretty much.
So we'll,
Well, that'll keep you, then you'll only have supporting posts in the wetland. I mean, isn't that better?
oh yeah, that's
Well, that would be an
Except when there's
additional,
a hurricane
that would be an additional selling point where you could have a drawbridge, you know.
for the tall ships.
Privacy.
Alright,
Additional requirements must obtain a 401 water quality cert. Okay.
yeah, we understand that.
Okay, I'm not even gonna read that last one. It's paperwork.
Yep, we're fully aware of that, so. For the most part, I thought it was a pretty good,
Yeah.
nothing,
So having said all this, are there anything else from the commission?
I'm confused by their span or bridge comment. Where are they?
Where
The
did
link,
you
the link to
Is
get
Is
there.
that what they're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've gotten quite a few of these and they always want, and I thought this would be ridiculous, a bridge.
To a house. 600 feet long.
I'll give it to them in
Yeah,
the
but they're giving
401.
they're giving you the opening to justify what you're doing by saying that.
So I gotta propose a bridge and get some numbers on what that $5 million bridge will
Right.
cost, and show it's a single-family house lot that's worth $150,000, so it's not worth
Right.
it.
That's why they asked the question up front.
So we
So
will
the-
take care of that.
I'm not familiar with the water quality cert process. Does that require like alternatives analysis? Is that why they're
Yes,
mentioning that? Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense then.
and a bridge is one of them,
Yeah. Okay.
so. I haven't proposed a tunnel. We could maybe try that.
Hey,
Big
don't joke,
dig of
I have
rock-
someone in front of me who's building an underground bowling alley in his house.
Hey, is it under a wetland?
Hopefully that roof is waterproof.
How far down does a wetland go?
You can't dig to find out.
It's a mystery.
Anything else? Going once? Going twice? We have a number. We've discussed it. Let's talk about the replication, because you
Okay.
actually mentioned that you were going to talk about that. So let's talk a little more about that replication.
Okay. I've got a chart with what we're planning on doing and how we're gonna do it, right here, this whole section here. And this was verbatim of one I did in the town of Holden that went through a 401 water quality cert on Greystone Greystone Drive, just a year ago. And this is exactly what we did for that whole process between DCR, water quality, and the town of Holden. So we gave them a sequence, a list of plants, and kinda how we're gonna do it. On the plot shows where the different trees are gonna go, so. And in this area, the area is not heavily wooded, it's brushy. Because when they cut for the other site, they removed trees 5-6
Right,
years ago.
that's to
So
get
that's
to here.
pretty
right.
brushy right up to that area.
Yep.
There's no big trees. And the process will be, we get to the right, pull out the material, the loams, get down to the right elevation, a little bit below the wet elevation, so we can bring in some loamy material and plant these plants. And and then monitor it for 2 seasons. So,
Everything's upland to the left of this plan from that
yeah,
attachment point, right?
goes
Yeah,
around.
that goes pretty steeply uphill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very steep.
Yeah.
The GIS shows too.
Yeah. Anything else?
So I'll ask the question to
Sure.
the commission members. So this would be a 1-to-1 replication.
1-to-1.
Do we want to ask for any more than that? Throwing it out there.
I'd be careful because this is a slope that they're gonna have to pull a lot of material out to get to the right elevation.
Yeah, I mean, practically speaking, they're against the wetland. In fact, you're in the wetland here, but and you're pretty.
No, the wetland line goes like.
Yeah, the whole right edge.
Like
is the
this.
edge of the
Right.
Oh, that is the right. So you're already
Carving this out.
already adjacent to the wetland.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm not in the right meeting. This countryside.
Conservation Commission.
Nope.
Yeah, I think you're looking
Yeah,
for
as
the.
soon as I came home, I'm
big
like,
room.
that looks like a different kind of meeting.
And then,
We could always ask if we don't have to replicate. I'm all for that too.
Hmm.
You know?
I don't think the regs allow us to consider that as an option today,
To not replicate?
to not
I
replicate.
don't believe so.
I did hear when we went on the first or second site walk for the cell tower, Chris Lucas was talking about Army Corps doesn't do replication at all anymore because they don't take enough.
Yeah.
And so that there was some other, I hate to say pilot, but it's something in lieu of
Mhm.
replication.
Yeah.
But that's not part of our,
No.
although it's for consideration in our regs, I think, perhaps.
Well, it'd be one of those if they're gonna naturally restore themselves somewhere to a point.
Yeah.
I mean, which a lot of it does.
And the reason I asked the question initially, it's a lot of times, we don't have a requirement above 1-to-1 because we don't have a bylaw, but a lot of times the requirement is more than 1-to-1 so that if the whole area doesn't take,
Mhm.
you at least ultimately get what was disturbed.
We'll make sure you get what you're gonna, we'll make sure that it's gonna be there. He's a green thumb. You see the lawns going down Main Street?
Yeah. I mean, just so the rest of the commission knows, some of the things we discussed on the site walk, Julian, is I remember you talking about what it would take to replicate over here.
Right, we'd be crossing to get there.
You have to cross to get there, and that's just gonna be
So
Right.
that's
destructive to the stream.
Right.
both of them,
Yeah,
but.
that's right, you go up here, you have
That's
to
why I
cross
picked the
too.
spot that is least
Yeah.
impactful. We wanna stay away from those streams.
And we can get to that on this property easy from
Right,
the condos.
right.
So,
What would we like to consider for specials?
I think along Jared's point, the monitoring for 2 years with the 80% success rate for any plantings. Minimum
That's a good idea.
is our standard.
Wait, somewhere in here, they said something.
a white pine. We had a white pine in the replication, cause that's pretty much what's there.
What's there?
The whole area, we're trying to replicate what's there, and that whole area is white pine, but we can pull that white pine out of there. That just doesn't make sense. They try to say, replicate what you're taking out. Well, we're gonna be cutting a ton of white pines to get there.
Right.
So why can't we replicate with, but you can take them out, no problem. You can make that a condition. No white pines in the replication
No,
area, replace them with a red maple.
Not one of those.
We don't like
No,
white pines.
Put it in what normally goes in.
That was it. Like I said, it's already being built right now as we're speaking. It's the exact same format. Not as big of a wetland, but a more detailed. It was on a side of a steep hill. And I got through everything with this idea, so.
All right. So along the driveway, now, Julian, you're aware of this, I'm saying this more for the public than for the commission. When you're this close to a wetland, we normally like to have markers, something to discourage people from entering the wetlands, but you're also gonna be immediately adjacent to it. So I don't know, again, I'm asking the commission, do we want any sort of anything on the upper side, if I can use this, the map orientation of the driveway?
Lower side.
Yeah, the lower side,
Lower
yes.
side.
I was calling it upper because it's up in this
Up in the
map.
plan, but
It's not,
lower
but you're right.
elevation.
In land, it's lower.
I think total slope's gonna be very obvious where the wetlands
Mhm.
begin, and that's a 2-to-1 slope, maybe 2.5 to 1.
And anything you do is gonna be off the driveway. and
Right,
in-
and so
and
you're
in the
gonna put
wetlands,
it in
so-
the wetland. So again, I'm just asking the questions.
I don't need,
Because you can't do a marker, can you have a permanent sign off on the deed on transfers? That they know they can't expand the driveway?
no deed restriction?
That's just wording. Just for the driveway. Just for the driveway.
Just- Sure.
Driveway can't be expanded on a deed restriction.
I don't see any reason.
I mean, that's a
problem with
simple,
that. Actually, one of the 401 would be, and I did this on Moose Crossing, yeah, because that was a limited project, believe it or not,
Mhm.
because it couldn't get there.
right.
Was a deed restriction that no more wetlands will be filled on this property for any reason. I hate to do that, but there is no other reason to fill anything on this property.
No, but again,
And that will be one of my, I probably have to do it for the
right,
for
but
401.
the only reason for
ones.
something like this is,
Yeah, so if you're gonna do it for the 401, it's nothing to
Say
just
no,
continue
no
it
expansion
over.
of the single-family home driveway access.
Yeah,
I think that's almost
because
a,
you're not giving anything up at that
when
point.
people find out what it costs to do an expansion, they wouldn't do it anyways.
Yeah. Well, you don't know 100 years from now, I mean.
That's true.
do you,
Right, hold on, Jim, what are you thinking, how far back are you going to finish the, basically impact what's in this area as you approach the wetland? Basically, how close are you coming to it here? Because this could be another place, if you were going to basically go all the way down, that boulders, signs, whatever, on this part could actually be beneficial so that somebody knows where the edge is.
So if we put it at the 20, your 15-foot line off of that wetland,
Mhm.
put some
a couple boulders here.
boulders along that edge,
Yep.
so that would be
Yeah.
the area where people would use, so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
15
not trying to
foot.
restrict usage, I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
just keep
15
them
feet
out
away,
of the
put some
places they
boulders so you
shouldn't
see
go.
them.
A couple markers.
Sure,
Yeah.
we're gonna hit plenty of boulders, we usually do.
In this town?
Maybe I should be able to move some of these.
Julian, I'm assuming your erosion control line, that's basically your
That's
limit of
pretty
work,
close,
right?
we kept it tight, so
Yeah.
that's a little,
So you got some separation to the edge of the wetlands.
Oh, there
Right.
is,
There's
you're right,
the
you're right, you're
100
right.
is right there.
Right there, yeah.
So I'm
So if
almost
you're not
out of
planning
that.
to finish this, if you're not planning to do anything with this
No,
area, I
this
don't
is
think
a
there's
good
any need
buffer
it
that's
there.
left, yeah.
Probably
That's,
just-
Yeah, I'm not worried about that area. I think along the driveway, like you raised a good question, Peter. A lot of times we would have boulders or markers or something. Looking at the grading, and I feel like you'd have to fill more wetlands to create it
To be
level
able to
put
support-
something there.
yeah.
Which is kind of defeats the purpose. So
How many acres of upland is that, Jimmy?
It's about
I
an
know.
acre and 3/4.
So it's non-subdividable anyways.
No,
Okay. Well, again, you can't go for an estate lot or something
Right.
silly off it. Okay.
so,
I'm
Just-
gonna ask the
that's-
same question though, for this area.
there's nothing, that's the senior housing project, that's already completely designed and maxed out, so that's just a big field up there right now, and it's gonna stay that way.
Is that open space, Jimmy? No.
There's no open space in a senior housing development.
You never know what people write. Some people like strange things.
Peter, so can I clarify, are we doing boulders at a certain spot that I should be very specific about?
No,
conditions?
I think we're not going to because it actually doesn't make sense. Up here by the replication area, that's just big open space that people aren't very likely, especially with
And
this
it's a
grade.
cliff.
Yeah, with that grade, nobody's going to approach. The limit of work is here, where he's got the erosion control line, and so there's all of this space to the wetland. It's just not that close. And along the driveway, it doesn't make sense, as we've sort of talked about, just in terms of being able to support anything. So, no, I don't think we're going to have any this time.
Okay, and are we going to do the special condition for the monitoring for 2 years or no?
Yes, I think so.
All right, so monitor for 2 years with 80% success rate for plantings?
Yeah, and any plants that, oh, and it's yearly reporting for 2 years.
Yearly reporting, okay.
And the certificate of compliance cannot be issued until after the 2-year period or 2 years of monitoring is completed.
Is there any reason to not close this hearing? Hearing nothing, I'll take a motion.
Motion.
Go ahead. H before beauty.
Go ahead. I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Oh, second.
Roll call.
Coco, aye.
Langer and I.
Black eye.
Gentilucci, aye.
Dan's aye.
Green eye. We ready to sign off on the specials? Sorry, on the orders?
Yeah.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Last time.
And just with the conditions as noted.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Roll call.
Gentilucci, aye.
Black eye.
Langer and I.
Coco, aye.
Dan's aye.
Green eye. You're all
Thank
set,
you.
guys. Thanks very much. We didn't talk about the DCR letter, which really doesn't say very much, right?
No, just so we have to notify them, which
Yeah.
we already know.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You are
Have a
very
good night.
welcome. Hey, it's time to talk about 72 Ridge Road. So this came up with the building permit for this. Let me... Oh, where? So, hold on, let's do this. Ridge Road, the property, the house is going here-ish. And there clearly needs to be access, and then there's this wetland pond that is near wherever this driveway is to be.
Is it isolated?
I don't know. Anybody care to guess what the square footage of this is anyway? But
Did
in
you
any
turn on
event,
the aerial maps?
oh, you want? All right, hold on.
I can get you an area.
Leave me alone. Come here. You want the aerials? Aerial didn't show us a lot more, I don't think. I mean, yeah, well, that's true. It does show us where the current path is.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if there was a connection that you could see.
Oh, I see.
So that pond's about 15,000 square feet in area,
Okay.
which makes me wonder if there isn't a hydrologic connection, is it large enough it would be considered isolated land subject to flooding, potentially?
Yeah.
Which would make it jurisdictional. And it probably would be based on just how large an area it is.
Well,
That
Is
would-
it spring fed?
Shouldn't it?
It's spring.
So it's actually, how deep is it?
5 feet.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's really there.
yeah,
Mhm.
Okay, it's not the map looking funny.
Well, he's definitely got the 1/4 acre foot there.
yeah.
So, applicant would like to build a single-family house reusing this path as his driveway, or the driveway. And I did, not that one. Wait, is there a better portion of it somewhere, maybe? Yeah, this is better, because it shows rough location of the house, and it doesn't actually show the path, but we know where it's going to be, because it is.
Yeah, I would suggest we just look at an RDA on this.
That's fine. I'm willing, I brought it up to the commission so the commission can decide, because it wasn't,
Peter, did you see the email response that I forwarded you from Mr. Lazat?
well, he's here today.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I can't tell.
I don't think so.
Have we ever walked this? I'm
No.
in my head, I'm still trying.
There has never been a filing for this property. We would have had no reason to
Okay.
walk it.
Where is this?
I don't.
Give me.
Ray Johnson. Johnson fence.
Yeah.
Ridge Road, used to be Harry Johnson's
Yeah.
property.
Right off what you said.
It's to the left of.
So looking at the house, it's to the left-hand
If you're
side.
facing the house, left-hand side.
Okay. That's what I'm sitting there kind of going like.
There's an old cart road that went
Yes.
down beyond the pond.
Yep, yep.
And we just wanted to, to utilize that path to get out there, basically.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
already established, we're just kind of using a pre-existing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks pretty big.
It is. I mean,
Now, how wide is that path now?
No. 15 feet.
That's plenty wide for a driveway.
Yeah.
I mean,
My only concern was extension.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to extend anything there.
And you're gonna top it with anything, or just literally leave it as a dirt,
It's
as the
gonna be
dirt path it
gravel,
is right
gravel.
now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think an
So
RDA
the one
just,
suggestion for an RDA. Anyone have any other thoughts about this?
I like to walk it, personally. Just because it's, I mean, if that's because of the depth and everything of that, you know what, it takes. Okay, is it expanding? Is it not expanding?
It's all, that whole property is a hill.
Yeah.
Continuous.
I've been out there. It's just I can't remember.
So even if that pond was to run over, it's
Right.
gonna run down off
Right.
in the distance.
I think it's just one of those, and it's not. We do it for most stuff. It's just one of those to put eyes on. Because did anybody look at it? Oh yeah, we saw it. You're good.
I brought a couple of pictures, but it's just the driveway that goes by the pond.
Yeah.
So-
I would do a walk on that.
So arrange a site walk. I won't be here, so you guys arrange it yourselves.
Are you available during the week?
Absolutely.
It's easier to do it during the week, for me anyway, I know.
I can do it. Well, I can do it till after 4 now.
I'll accommodate whatever's
Yeah.
works for you guys.
Yeah, if you wanna go sometime this week.
You want to see this?
It's not supposed
If
to
I
rain.
can make it, I'll try, but if it's during the week, I probably can't.
Thursday, it's not supposed to rain, right?
It's supposed to
Oh,
be
Oh,
this
like
Thursday.
they know, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a heat wave Thursday.
Well,
so
we're
you
used to
have
doing
these-
that in rain anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you? I can either do. No, I can't do Friday.
That's what I'm saying, Thursday.
I'll leave West Boylston at 4. I'm gonna run by those other ones for the erosion controls.
Okay.
4:30 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we'll take pictures and I'll do my usual, take pictures and send them. I mean, it shouldn't be bad. Just walking in, take some pictures.
As I say, I mean, you already have a driveway there now.
Actually, tomorrow's right.
It looks like it's gravel, some sort of gravel already.
There's gonna be no change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just
The
want
house
to.
is gonna be dug 200 feet away from
Right,
any of
right.
this. There's
It-
no excavation anywhere near this
Yeah.
pond.
I mean, it literally sounds like. I feel like an RDA makes sense. It almost sounds like even an RDA is more than it
Yeah.
needs to be,
Right, but guess what? I mean, it's one of those. I think because it
Just the presence.
just the presence.
Yeah, I agree.
That
I
covers
mean,
it.
it's like the
That covers
cowpawns and other
everybody.
stuff. You know what? You look at it and go, yeah, okay.
Nobody can come back to them after
Right.
the RDA.
That's true.
Right.
An RDA does protect you as well.
It protects.
It protects everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Um,
I mean, yeah, I could be because if I'm gonna swing by the ones on 68 for the erosion control on my way home, so to pop over there, I leave West Boylston at 4, so 4:30.
Yeah, I'll be
And again, by right it should be quick because it just puts eyes on it and protects you.
I have no quarrel with any of this.
Do you want do you want to go for an RDA? Or you want us to look at it first? I mean, if it looks like nothing.
Based on the conditions today, I
Mhm.
would suggest an RDA. I think if we're gonna walk it tomorrow we can have the final discussion, and Tamika can help you with the RDA filing and submission.
Yeah.
Yes, Tamika, I'm signing you up for more work.
Yeah.
You got it.
That's like instant service. But timing works good on that, especially because I'm coming that way anyways.
That's good.
All right, so we will see you, some of us will see you tomorrow at
Yeah.
4:30.
Yeah. I know I walked it years ago with him, but I can't remember it.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those.
Happy to show it to you.
People can't argue with eyes.
Right.
In pictures.
Yep.
Sounds good.
We
Okay.
should be in the habit of taking more pictures.
I
to
take
attach them to
I take a ton.
Yeah, we just need to attach them to
Right.
the property so that so that we can find them next time.
Right. Right.
Just ask Tamika and you can upload them right there. That's what I did.
That's right.
Awesome.
Cool.
You
See
have
you
a
Russ,
Google
tomorrow
login,
afternoon.
don't you?
Yep, I'll
I
be there.
do.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Okay.
See you tomorrow, then.
All right,
The
that's it for
Thursday,
today.
right?
Thanks. And
Thursday, 4:30, right?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh,
Tomorrow.
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 Oh, yeah, okay,
Uh,
tomorrow's good.
Tamika, when would they need to get the paperwork and the $35 check to you to get this noticed properly?
I would need it by Friday, so I can email you the application for it tomorrow, and then I would just need a check for $32.16 odd amount, payable to the Telegram and Gazette. And you can drop that right off in my office in the town annex building.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, if you could email me that, and so I don't mess any of the numbers up. I can drop
I
the
know,
check
it's
off
such a
tomorrow.
random amount. I'll just send it in the email.
I'll just ask for $35, right? Or 32.
If they, it's because they write it to the Telegram, so we we wouldn't even
Right.
see any of the overage.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow, and then hopefully we'll know exactly. But tomorrow by 5, we should know everything that you need to do.
If anything.
Yeah, if any. Yep, fair enough.
Cool. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave. We are moving on in our agenda to 33 River Road. So, Jared, you went on the sidewalk for that, right?
Sure, I did. I met Michael, he's the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
Met him, we walked the site. In summary, I did not see anything that concerned me at all. Nothing is being dumped or stored in the wetlands. If there is a wetland there, it looks like it's a potentially an intermittent stream.
Mm-hmm.
It was somewhat well defined down near the road, less defined as you went up further into like the back corner of his property.
I.e. drainage.
Just,
Yeah,
well, I was going to call it
that's- yes.
surface water.
I mean, from what I could see, we went down to the road because I was curious. There is looks like a stone culvert that goes under River Road. So
Mhm.
there's, I'm sure there is flow there at certain times. It was dry as bone when we were out there on Saturday. Down near the road, there was definitely some sort of channel there. There's a lot of leaf cover, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of flow recently. But
Mhm.
take that as it is. The work that Michael did kind of up near the house is all on the other side of the driveway.
Mhm.
Last time I had checked the distances, even if that is a stream, intermittent stream, I think all that was still more than 100 feet away. So, and that's all very well stabilized, no issues there, and it's on the other side of the driveway, further from the wetland. So, I didn't see any concerns there. He's got a small pile of like lawn clippings on the, I guess, it'd be the north edge of the driveway, but still pretty far from what would maybe be considered the wetland.
Mhm.
Again, nothing I saw that concerned me. So,
How's the vegetation? Didn't you plant grass, remember, or whatever? Where you filled up
that was up on the
Established?
kind of the south side.
Established?
Oh, well established.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, you said it was pretty well established, so I
Yeah.
figured
Yeah,
I'd
it came
ask.
in pretty good.
Yeah, okay,
well
that's-
stabilized. No,
It came up in the last time, so let's just
Yeah.
check the box.
Yep. Nope. All looked good to me.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
One thing just to mention, when we were walking, there was that tree that you said you're
Oh, yeah,
considering.
that's right.
Maybe at some point it's leaning at like 45 degrees
Mhm.
over his driveway.
Oh.
So we did talk about that while we were out there. He may end up taking it down. The plan would be to leave the stump in. So
Okay.
I had suggested if you do plan to take it down, just let us know. I don't think in the end we'd actually need a filing because if the stump stays, there's no earth disturbance.
It's a dangerous tree.
It's
just,
a safety
tell
concern.
us.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you do plan to take it down, I would suggest just let us know, and that way we can say, okay, we'll put it on
we
the
know, we know
record.
what you're doing.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, thank you.
but yeah, no concerns from my end.
Sounds like we're closed.
Yep.
Yay, something we don't have to talk about next week. All right. Do you have any questions for us?
I do not, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks, you too. So, recently, let's put this in context. There's a property on, is it Emerald Road, Skip? that's being sold to the DCR.
Yeah,
It is in 61A today, and it's going to remain in 61A. And the select board has taken it up a couple of times, and the assessor's office has drafted a policy for how the town will deal with 61A properties. I will admit, I haven't even read it yet, but.
there's already state laws that says how and the procedures to do so.
Uh-huh.
So
Wouldn't that have
why
to-
are we writing?
Wouldn't that be approved by a town vote to change that?
No,
Okay, I'm just
no,
asking.
that is this will be a select board policy. And that just needs.
Concerning private citizens' property.
No, concerning the,
concerning the
s-
transfer of
concerning the work
61
done.
and 61
Which
land.
is still privately owned.
no, but it concerns the
Yeah.
towns, the
Okay.
town, the actions the town will take
Mm-hmm.
should the town ever get have access to a property, consider taking right of first refusal.
There's already things in place, but I'm not gonna argue with them because it doesn't do you any good.
Peter, may I had a conversation with Amy Ivanowski, the assessor who drafted it,
Yes.
and their main intention behind it is that right now we don't have anything in writing short of printing the MGL from the state's website. So when folks come in and start this process, we don't have any way to guide them. So her intention was just to put something in writing for the benefit of the residents, basically. And a lot of it just follows MGL. There really isn't anything that she's trying to add so much as she's just trying to document it for folks.
Okay.
So
now,
it would be identical to state reg?
Correct.
I already see an issue.
Your keen eyes.
If it's an informational pamphlet, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's something here that I'm not sure is right at all. I would agree that this policy can apply to 61, 61, and 61B. I do not believe that this policy can be applied to APR. I can
No.
be wrong.
No.
APR is a very
APR
different
is
process.
a whole different thing.
Yep.
And in fact,
What's APR?
agricultural protection
Ah.
restriction.
Yeah.
And town doesn't even have a right of first refusal on transfer of those.
No.
So,
They're making a bylaw.
You gotta outbid the state.
I don't even know that there's the ability for us to bid against it if the state wants to do
Yeah,
something.
you-
Yeah, so it's,
Well, see, I don't see where Commissioner DCI, that shouldn't even be in there. Why should I notify DCI if I want to sell my farm? And I'm under 61A. I can see notifying all the boards, but DCR, State Forestry, no.
Skip, if I may, that's MGL. It says it in MGL that you have to notify the forestry division.
just on a transfer?
That's if your land's under 61B, right?
No, 61A as well. I just looked it up the other day, and it specifically states who you have to provide it to as far as notification goes, and the last one that they list is the state forester.
I'm
So,
getting educated, thank you.
So that's sell or convert? You have to do the same notification, Tamika?
Yes.
Since you looked at the MGL sections and I haven't lately?
Yeah, I looked at it because we had something that came into the office that was questionable, and so during that process, I just tried to educate myself by reading the MGL, so that's why it's fresh in my head.
Well, it's certainly a new one on me. I don't know of anything in MGL that requires that, because we've done transfers without it.
Maybe they might not have been done right. I don't know.
Because it just, there's a piece of land in town that has just been transferred to DCR.
Mhm.
And I forget which piece it was. Just did it last night, matter of fact.
Why would they leave it in 61?
No, they transferred it to DCR.
Yeah,
Took it out of the tax rolls.
right. Well, they're not, they own 59% of our town.
Huh?
Now they own 59% of our town.
Yeah.
With no taxes. They do. They own, DCR owns over 50% of Rutland.
No kidding.
Yeah, no taxes.
Oh, wow.
It's actually, I'm not, we joke a lot, but that's a non-joke.
You have to supply the purchase and sale even if they're just transferring? That's weird.
Well, you'd have to have some kind of,
Value
even on
to
a
the-
transfer, you gotta have something, because they're gonna change
Well,
the deed. I
no,
mean,
that's true, but I don't understand the purpose of sending that to the town.
I would agree with Tamika, it is MGL. We get those when we have the first right of refusal. I think you guys just don't maybe put it together, like, it's just part of the packet. I don't think we register it when we kind of go through it.
Oh, no, my question isn't during change of use. It's just for a transfer. Somebody's selling the land that is under any of the 61s.
Yep.
All
we
they're
get
doing
that.
is selling it. It's not going to change use. You still get the purchase and
Yep.
sale?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Even if it's for $1.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. Oh, great. The optional survey. Blah, blah, blah.
pretty
This
much
is
what's
also
up.
not. This is also simply not correct because this whole thing is completely conditional upon it being a change of use. There is no right of first refusal if they're just changing the ownership. Even if we have to even if they have to notify everything, there is no right of first refusal.
Right.
So there is no 120-day clock except for change of use.
That's right.
Well, there should be none. There should be none, but are they making one? Are they saying, hey, even if you're going to sell it to you, well, guess what? If we want to buy it for the same price, we can.
But we can't. We don't have the right.
But that's how it's worded, that they
Yeah, I
can.
know, that's why I'm saying this-
after it's done, well, oh, guess what? Jared bought it from Skip, and guess what? They're going to take it from Skip. They're gonna
Remember,
take it
this
from
is
Jared.
a
So
draft policy.
yeah.
I
so
think our comments very simply is as long as this is actually just following MGL, then
Right,
we have no comments.
right,
I think that should just be our comments at this point.
right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Instead of going through line for line and deciding what we like or what we think is right or wrong.
Right.
Right.
So I think our comments back to them is just, we recommend following MGL as an informational packet to landowners looking for options. Great idea.
Yeah, so it's an informational packet. It's not a
Yeah.
procedure or policy or right.
you be careful because
You want to
3 years from now, this will be followed to the letter.
This is a draft, though, right?
It is currently a draft. They
Okay.
have not approved.
Right. But if it's anything other than an informational piece of
Right,
paper.
so it's okay if it's
then it-
followed to the
it
letter,
has to
because this
go-
is MGL.
You're right. If it's,
That's
as
what
long
I'm
as
saying.
it's informational. Period. Informational.
A process is informational, Joe.
Right. But
So
if
a
you,
process that the select board is going to follow is still informational.
right. But if it deviates in any way from Mass General laws, right, it would have to go to the Attorney General's office. It has to go to town meeting and a vote.
Oh, that's a whole other thing.
That's, you're adopting a regulation at that point. If there's any change,
Yeah.
you are making a regulation.
Well, deal with it.
So if there's any
I mean,
change
she's
or
not
deviation
creating
from
anything.
MGL, then it becomes the equivalent of a town bylaw. And that you gotta go through the process for that.
Well, you have to do that for laws, but you don't have to do it for regulations. Regulations does not require town meeting.
Right, but
Okay.
regulation becomes difficult to enforce.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, as I say, there are incorrect elements in this policy.
Right, but we don't have to discuss the whole, all, It's just a matter of if it's gonna be exactly MGL, I mean, there's no discussion whatsoever.
I assume the purpose of us reviewing this is primarily the fact that we would get notified, which we haven't passed,
And we should,
Yeah.
because that's MGL.
and we should.
Which is what we've
Yeah.
always said about
Right.
this whole thing.
So, I mean, I agree. It's great to have a guidance document, a checklist, if you will, as long as it follows the Mass General laws,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So maybe that's the one comment, is to ensure that this policy is completely in compliance with Mass General laws. Because it's not.
Well,
Right,
so,
but
okay.
that's draft, so you,
yeah.
They were ready to approve it without anybody else's input.
see that?
Okay.
This is why it's come around, because somebody said it should be reviewed. All right.
So do we wanna actually give a written response
I think we should.
to the parties that be, or the powers that be? Voicing
Yeah, I think.
our concern.
Yep,
if
I
you
believe
will.
that we should.
Okay.
So, I agree with that. I mean, you pointed out a couple things, Peter, that looks like needs to be corrected. I don't think it's necessarily this commission's responsibility to actually
To wordsmith everything.
wordsmith this,
Yep,
but
absolutely.
would we want to maybe recommend that before this gets finalized and adopted, however that process is, I mean, should this be reviewed by town council and attorney to make sure that it is following Mass General laws to the letter of the law, and that there's nothing in here that contradicts MGL
Contradicts or even supersedes.
or supersedes, right?
Yep.
'Cause I think it's a good idea to have a guidance document, so if somebody doesn't know all the steps, this will help them work through the steps, but it just needs to follow all the steps of MGL exactly, or else something could go astray.
Because if there's a deviation, then it becomes town bylaw, and then you gotta go
Right.
through the steps.
Okay.
Got that,
I
Tamika?
personally am very comfortable with just stating back the recommendation to please have, the assessor's office confirm compliance with MGL, because otherwise it's null and void anyways if it's more restrictive, because it's not passed by town meeting, so
That's a good point.
I think just simple as that, please
And they don't have
verify it
separate
complies with
buildings.
MGL.
Right.
Alrighty.
Good with that.
There you go.
It's 7:07, and next on our agenda are wetlands bylaw and regulations. Guess who didn't do, what's that?
Guess what?
I'm just curious.
Hold
You here for something?
Yes.
Now
know
might
why?
be a time to,
I have no idea, because there's another.
Because that's on the agenda, so now I'm curious.
Public.
Public
Oh,
comment.
okay. Public comment.
Okay, let's just skip to public comment, because we'll come back to the wetland stuff.
Yes.
So please, introduce yourself and,
I'm Cody Coyne, I live at 105 Glenwood Road.
Mm-hmm.
I have, I needed your help to clarify a few things so that I can understand the functions of what you do and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Conservation Commission Act, HB 18.9, it states that a municipal conservation commission is the official agency specifically charged with the protection of the community's natural resources and maintaining biological diversity. Stop me if there's anything you disagree with. And that charge is to promote natural resources, regulatory protection of watersheds, planning.
we don't protect watersheds.
That's what it says in your mission statement.
Who's,
whose mission statement?
yeah, what?
I can forward that to you for the commissions, Association of Commissions.
Wait a minute, Are
Planning.
you reading that out? of-
What are you reading? What's it coming
That's
from?
right, where's it, what's the
Where are
source
you
of this?
finding
I
that
can
out?
give you a source, but I
Oh,
copied
the
it.
source makes a difference.
I realize that. I believe it was from the Association of Conservation Commissions.
Oh,
And in the
Matt.
act,
Matt, yeah.
Man,
In that
yes,
act.
that doesn't.
Act HB 18.9.
So that would be the Massachusetts Association for Conservation Commissioners
Right.
mission statement.
Right. So planning, acquiring, managing open space through conservation. Those are implemented through the Wetlands Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40, Wetlands Protection Act Regulations 310 CMR, which stands for Codes of Massachusetts Regulations 10.0, and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 3140. The wetlands regulations in 310 CMR 10-00 establishes the procedures and standards for orders of conditions issued by local conservation commissions and MassDEP for work proposed in and around wetlands pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Act, MGL 13140. So, related to that, so that's where you take your charge from. At the September 6th meeting, the topic of endangered animal species was brought before the Conservation Committee, just in discussion, related to wetlands habitat protection. Members of the Commission responded to this saying that unless endangered animal species were in a specified estimated habitat map area, then the Commission has no responsibility or authority. Which makes about as much sense as the only place you're going to see an endangered species is in a zoo, which isn't true. You hope your conservation actions expands the endangered species, but right now that's the regulation. But in the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, 310 CMR 10.00, there's a fairly large section in there related to wildlife habitat. And that includes the endangered species. It doesn't distinguish between unendangered and endangered. It includes all wildlife. And that is a big section of your act and your regulations. I very rarely ever hear this ever discussed, but it is a big chunk of that. 310 CMR 10.60, wildlife habitat evaluations, measuring adverse effects on wildlife habitat. To the extent that the proposed project in inland banks, land underwater, including vernal pools, which some bylaws really focus a lot of time on. Vernal pools, I never really hear that discussed in here very often, but be that as it may. Riverfront areas, land subject to flooding will alter vernal pool habitat or will alter other wildlife habitat beyond thresholds permitted in 310 CMR 1054, 1056, 1057, 1058. Such alterations may be permitted only if they have no adverse effect on wildlife habitat.
Through the chair, Peter, I'm
Yes.
sorry, that specific
Can I finish,
section. Hold on, that specific section is not that wildlife habitats do have a threshold and single family homes are exempt from that wildlife evaluation.
I did not
For
see that.
reason.
I did not see that when we're reading it.
I-
So I just would like to
I'm
finish.
sorry, I do not have the regulations in front of me, but wildlife habitat evaluations have a larger threshold in which those come into effect. So for
It
these smaller
describes the
projects,
thresholds, but it doesn't say anything about limitations related to single resident homes. I did not see that anywhere in the regulations.
I'd be
It
happy
gives
to
the
find this
thresholds,
here and send
it
it
does
to
give the
Steve.
thresholds, and I can provide those thresholds if you'd like. Anyway, CMR 1060, as I mentioned, wildlife habitat characterization of inland resources. 310 CMR 1540, banks for vernal pools, which was discussed by one of your members at this meeting related to this topic. Quote, banks are likely to be significant to public and private water supply, to groundwater supply, and to the protection of fisheries and wildlife habitat. There's nothing in there about any other stipulations. 310 CMR 1056, land under water bodies, water including creeks, rivers, streams, ponds, vernal pools, and lakes. Land under water bodies and waterways likely to be significant to the protection of fisheries and wildlife. I have the entire paragraph here.
Without going through everything,
Okay, let me,
all right,
okay,
you
I'll
s- can you
paraphrase.
tell us exactly what your issue is?
Well, that does fall under your jurisdiction. It was
What
stated
does?
in a previous
What does?
wildlife habitat.
Okay,
And it was, on several occasions, it was deflected as that's not our responsibility. We don't address that. We don't look at that. When it is a big
if
chunk.
it's mapped as an endangered species area,
That's for endangered species. That's the point of why I bring this up. This is for wildlife. This is not for endangered
no, if it's
species.
endangered species,
No, it's not. That is, here, I have that one for endangered species. 310 Mass Regulation 1059 is for regulations for endangered species.
right?
This other is only for wildlife. It's in the same section and it's partitioned out related to wildlife and endangered species. They're separate.
They're separate.
The ones that I just mentioned were for wildlife.
Chair, so 310 CMR 10.6 wildlife habitat evaluations, it says that, yes, so we'll alter vernal pools habitat or we'll alter all other wildlife habitat beyond the thresholds permitted under 310 CMR 10.5 for 5A and 5.4, which I believe is discussing, if you just take me a second to get back there. It has specific thresholds for the amount of disturbance. So 10 point,
The banks shall, for example, banks, the banks shall not be impaired by the following.
there are no
Physical
banks on this
stability of
project.
the
This
bank,
was bordering vegetated
water carrying
wetlands
the
only.
capacity of existing channels.
Actually,
Groundwater.
I'd like to ask a specific question.
Yes,
Are you, because I just heard Melissa say something specific to a project today, are you talking about a particular project or are you just talking generically? Do you have,
both. But as I preface this, there have been several occasions in meetings where this has been brought up and it's been deflected as not a responsibility, when it is. It is a responsibility that you have. You're charged with this under
Melissa,
the
would you- have you
Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act regulations. It's a
Have you found that,
regulation.
Melissa?
Yep, so it's talking about bank, which is the bank to a stream or a river, and which was not part of that application, I believe, that we're talking about in Glenwood Road. There was only bordering vegetated wetlands.
That's not how I brought this up. But there are vernal pools out there, though.
Certified,
wasn't bringing
certified,
that
they're certified.
There were no,
They're certified?
there were no
There's no
vernal
certified
pools.
No certified
vernal
vernal
pools
pools over there.
There,
There are no
Me-
vernal pools in that area.
there is water along.
It's not a vernal
The-
pool.
That's
but
not a vernal
anyway,
pool.
I brought this
let him
up
finish.
not.
Let him finish.
I brought this up as a general functional capacity and responsibility. I was not referring to that. You brought that up. I did not.
Brought what up?
About the location. This was about policy and procedure. That's the way I entered this. I said nothing about a specific project.
So.
I was bringing this up related to
Right,
what,
I think you're misreading the regulation and not.
Yeah.
You're not,
So
you don't
that
have the
section-
whole story there.
The
Melissa, would
wildlife
you-
habitat evaluation is when it results in a loss of more than 5,000 square feet of BBW is when we can require that. Per 10.554B is when it talks about that, the authority and the reference in the 10.6.
that doesn't, at least the copy I have does not have that by the thresholds.
I understand you have to look back at the citations that it's referencing those thresholds within. So it talks about 10.55 and 5.4, I believe. So that those general performance standards within those citations list that 5,000 square feet BBW loss.
Well, for what I have here, what it states,
DCR
To the
says-
extent that the proposed project on inland banks, land
So that this-
underwater, vernal
Yep.
pools, rivers front areas, land subject to flooding,
Yep.
will alter the vernal pool habitat or will otherwise
beyond the
alter
threshold,
wildlife habitat beyond thresholds permitted under, and
Which is what I
and it
just read.
states those. And I have each of those for 1054, 1056, 1057, 1058, and it just gives the thresholds.
right?
And it doesn't say anything about maximum or minimum. It describes what should not be done, what action should not occur.
Right.
It describes what actions are jurisdictional of the Conservation Commissions and which ones are not.
Where does it say that? I have this in front of me and I don't see that where it says that.
It doesn't
Okay.
use that word, but the fact that we can only regulate activities beyond the threshold, activities less than the threshold are not regulatable by us and therefore are not jurisdictional to this Conservation Commission.
No, but what the point that I'm trying to say is that in the past, it has been deflected that this isn't a responsibility at all. What I'm
No,
saying
it's
is
not
that,
it's not a. I apologize if that's how it came off of. It's not that it's a responsibility. It's an unfortunate limitation that we cannot require wildlife habitat studies for most projects that come in front of us because they just don't disturb the minimum amount that the Wetlands Protection Act allows us to require them for. So we just have severe limitations when it does come, because that is an interest of the Wetlands Protection Act. But unfortunately, it is not very much enforced for projects that are small in nature for residential. It's typically for larger projects or that have a lot of bordering vegetated or wetland fill.
I need to double check that, but what I was trying to present, which I enunciated fairly clearly, is that this does come under your purview. There may be stipulations when it does and doesn't apply, but it was stated in several meetings, we don't have anything to do with that. In general, as a concept.
I state that it was not within our jurisdiction, which is absolutely correct. Because while it is an interest of the Wetlands Protection Act and an interest of the Conservation Commission, under many of the filings or all of them in which we've stated it is not in our jurisdiction to require wildlife habitat studies. It is because that is correct.
Okay, I will refer back again to the meeting of the 6th of September when it was basically said, we don't do anything with that. That's not our responsibility.
It's that we cannot require them.
It was stated, we don't have anything to do with that.
Okay, I apologize. My understanding and when I tell that to applicants or abutters, it's that we unfortunately do not have as much jurisdiction as we would like for wildlife management and for endangered species or otherwise.
Again, I read those fairly regularly. I did not see what you're referring to. I saw where it said the thresholds and things that cannot be done to banks, vernal pools, all those things.
Excuse me, that is not what the regulation says. The regulation does not say it may not be done. The regulation says that the Conservation Commission has authority to regulate and set conditions upon such activities.
Right.
So we collectively apologize for any time that we have said that we do not have wildlife responsibilities.
Right.
It was our shorthand for representing what we have the authority to do on a particular project.
Right. On those particular projects, we said we didn't have it. It's because it didn't disturb enough.
So here's where I'm coming from. For example, it says, where the presumption set forth in 310 CMR 1054 is not overcome, any proposed work on the bank shall not impair the following. It doesn't, there's no preconditional.
Do you understand?
We
Do you understand the term bank?
We do not often
what that
get
is?
projects with banks.
But no, it's for banks, it's for water under, land underwater.
We don't-
In
We don't, that's
1056.
mostly coastal.
It's
don't
also
get those.
for
That's
the thresholds
coastal.
for bordered isolated lands near
Right,
flooding.
we don't live on the coast here.
This
That-
does not
that
say
applies
salt
to-
water.
No, that applies more to coastal wetlands. What we're
doesn't say
dealing
that.
with here,
It doesn't say that.
you live at number 105, right?
Right.
Right? The regulations that we imposed on that property when it was developed are no different than the property right behind you. No different.
I'm not referring to any specific property.
Well, no, I know, and I understand why you are not. All right?
Well,
But I
but it does-
understand also why you are here.
No, it's not.
No, what
But
you're doing is
bringing
you're
that up, though, the
couching,
100-year
you're couching-
floodplain does come up
you're
to that property.
couching and trying to set up some type of a action on our part, all right? That
No, that's not the way I presented this.
You're asking us to do something, or trying to present an argument to do something, okay, in a general form, when you are specifically targeting a given property.
That is incorrect. The way I presented
No,
this is...
all I'm doing is
You're
trying to like
accusing
I'm
me of
seeing
something
it.
that I did not do. I presented this
Right.
related to
But you're-
something that I didn't understand because of what was, and I gave the date and of what was, and the verbatim statement that was made.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefaced all this with, I need to have you describe some things so I can better understand this.
Right.
Because I'm reading these regulations, and you're saying in the meeting you have nothing to do with them. And I don't understand that. There's nothing in there about salt water or coast. That doesn't say that.
Right. You're not reading the whole thing. You're taking things out of context. Okay? What Melissa was trying to explain was that in the case of 99% of the things that come before this board,
Right.
all right, it doesn't apply because the impacts are below the thresholds. All right? Where the cost of, to a homeowner wanting to build a home, the cost of doing all of the things that would be required on a large project, like a subdevelopment, if you will,
Right.
okay, to impose those same costs onto a small lot, okay, is unreasonable. Okay, and that's where it doesn't apply. All right, the things that you're reading there, okay, apply to bank, which is a river bank, okay?
Well, that was one example.
That's
there,
one
are- there
example,
are
right?
plenty
Land
examples.
underwater.
Joe, I think
Land
I
underwater,
can clear this up
which
really quickly.
we
Hold
don't
on.
let-
Joe.
We don't let anybody who,
Hold on, hold on.
Let
Joe,
Melissa
hold on
talk,
one sec.
please.
One sec. So I'm just rereading 10.6 again, wildlife habitat evaluations. And what 10.6 is actually doing is it's outlining how to create one. So it's what that citation is when you're saying to the extent that a proposed project is how, if you were to have to do a wildlife habitat evaluation, how you would measure the adverse effects on wildlife habitat. So you would need to follow those particular citations of when you were reading those before, if it were to divert water, etc. But still, again, you only have to do wildlife habitat evaluations when you get over that specific threshold or when they become a certain, size or area. So to Joe's point, it is kind of very difficult the way to read the regulations. That 10.6 is actually like an addendum. It's not necessarily the official regulations. How do they put it in they put additional regulations for inland wetlands as 10.6, but the most of our statement of jurisdiction is under 10.02. Our interest, yes, is wildlife habitat, but that's specific habitat evaluation form, and that 10.6 citation is actually just talking about when you are required to do so, this is how you measure those effects, and it's over a 2-year period. You have to demonstrate that you're not if you're not creating a loss of more than 50% of habitat in that area, etc. So that's the qualifications of it. And again, you kind of have to backtrack throughout the entire regulations to understand when that's triggered. But I think I said before that's kind of later in 10.4, and I think some more I think it's later in that 10.6 when it talks about 310 CMR 10.
4.6 and 2. I can't find it. I'm so sorry.
I will have to look that, I don't see anything, I've copied these verbatim, I didn't alter these or
I know,
edit these.
no,
I don't
totally
see that.
understand.
These
Right,
regulations
so-
are I'll just repeat them again, for related to flooding, banks,
Yep.
vernal pools, all that related, and it's related to their effect on wildlife, and that was the only point that I was trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
I was not bringing up a specific project.
Okay.
Understood.
That's what you said, that's not what I said,
Correct.
okay? And it seems like it must be important because it's a big section in there.
It is definitely important, but ironically, there's a lot of regulations that don't often come into play for a lot of the applications that most cities and towns get. So it's very difficult sometimes to request more for habitat, loss or studies, except when they're doing excessive wetland fill.
So you're saying that there's a specific amount that it doesn't
Yeah,
apply at all to a resident? What about the 10-acre
Correct.
tract is that above or below, or?
So it depends on, so it's not the size of the lot, it's how much of land disturbance or wetland direct fill they're doing. So because they're under the 5,000 square foot limit of the application that we saw earlier tonight, they do not have to do the wildlife habitat evaluation.
So was that just generally understood? It wasn't, I mean, there are other things you kind of
No, that
mull around
that's
about, but
actually
it
a
wasn't even
separate
brought up
It was,
as
because
a
it's within the
consideration.
notice of
It was
intent
just
form.
ignored.
No, it's within the notice of intent form. They need to check off if they are below or, how much wetland disturbance they're doing. Within our notice of intent, which is their application, they specified how much of the wetland disturbance and how much they're replicating. And they demonstrated that they have needed the exemptions, that they would not need a wildlife habitat study. So yes, it was not discussed in the meeting because we as commissioners review documents and we had no comments on it because we did not, we noticed and realized, and because we see these so frequently, that it did not require anything further on that front.
Okay.
That's
I
all
guess
we
where
talk
I'm
about
coming
square
from, where I
footage.
get just from my perspective, when I listen to the meetings, there are other things, and they happen to this evening, there are other things that you'll discuss. Well, does this apply? Does that apply? And you discuss that. That never gets discussed. It's never.
Because it's very infrequent.
It's standard.
Okay.
It's on the forms.
So, the Conservation Commission meeting of July 19th, discussions addressed the characterization of wetland indicator plants and soil composition for the identification of wetland areas. A member of the Conservation Commission stated that they often revisited approved construction sites to make sure that there were no violations that occurred, and that another deterrent was that the selling of the home could be prevented, which I think was Joe's comment. And that's good information. But the concern was expressed that in the community of Rutland, there are still quite a few construction sites that were completed where buildings had occurred near or on wetland areas. The result has been both the destruction or irreversible alteration of wetland areas, while also resulting in residential homes that have been had their structural integrity compromised by water.
Where are you reading that from?
This is from the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. A member of the Conservation Commission responded, well, things happen sometimes. The process is not ideal, and there's no perfect people. Well, it kind of implied, and again, I'm relying on you to clarify this, and I realize it was towards the end of the meeting, so maybe you did just want to call the end of the meeting, but the response kind of implied is we're kind of powerless. We don't really have a whole lot we can do.
Well, for
And
things that have been
so
done-
in 310 CMR 10-8, it states, when the Conservation Commission, the Department of the Office of Law Enforcement, of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs determine that an activity is in violation of MGL 13140, 310 CMR 10.00, again, that's related also to the wildlife, or a final order that the Conservation Commission or the Office of Law Enforcement may issue an enforcement order. Violations include leaving in place unauthorized fill, failing to restore illegally altered land to its original state, continuation of any activity in violation of MGL 13140, failure to obtain a valid final order, failure to complete a final order when failure causes damages to interests identified in MGL 13140, failure to comply with the final order, final determinations, failure to observe a particular condition on a time period specified in the order of declaration or certification. So there are options that you can use.
There are, and when it depends on how recent that the violations occurred, because as a practical matter, if there's a violation, if there's a wetlands violation on a property that we enforce, who gets the bill for the fine? The answer is the current owner of the property. So when something was done 10 years ago by a builder, for us to enforce something that happened 10 years ago on the current owner is unjust.
Oh, I agree. This is
this
policy and procedure I'm discussing.
Right. So we have, in fact, within the past year, had a significant violation investigation, and the end of the day, it turns out there wasn't anything, but we do not ignore wetlands violations.
Right.
What about fill,
We
grading?
went so
That's
far
all-
as to
they're all-
issue an
as far as I'm
enforcement
concerned, they're all
order.
wetlands violations.
We did an enforcement order on it.
Yeah, we actually did
Particular
one that we
bill.
had to rescind, yeah.
Right.
We do enforce it to the best of our ability and the best of our knowledge.
That's good clarification.
But the
Because at the
actual-
end, at the meeting, there was kind of this, well, there's not much we can do. And so that's what I needed to know. That you
If something
do-
had been
you
done
do
long
do
enough
that.
ago,
Okay.
then we have to make a call about what's just and not what's.
And, and even then, I think part of the stuff what you're telling us we made for comments, was it about something or were we just talking? I mean, it depends on what it's, if it's about something that happened or something we knew about, or it was just casual conversation.
Well, I do have an example
Sure.
I could give.
That would
but
be great.
I'd rather, since it's
Well, just
on
'cause I can't
video,
remember, I don't
wanna-
remember, so I'd like to, that would help.
That'd be good.
On
Because
video,
maybe
I
you could
don't
explain
want
more.
I don't want to do
Nope.
it on the public meeting.
We can't
I mean,
entertain
on
it.
can't
video.
entertain it.
You
Yeah,
can't
I-
entertain it if you're
I-
not willing to bring it up in a public meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, because again, out of context, I'd like to, so that would help. You're giving us what our response to something was, but we don't even know what we responded to.
Well, there have been issues where frankly, there's something you've seen and you just haven't acted on it.
Like, in general, you don't have to,
Let's move on.
then
I
you
could-
can't
I
make a
have-
sta- you can't make a statement.
That's fine.
Because you're accusing us of something, but you won't tell us what we
I'm
did.
not accusing you of something.
Yeah, you are. You tell us we don't know what we're doing, which, sorry, we do.
No, that's
Okay.
not what he said. What he
Oh.
said is we didn't take an action that he expected us to. It's not quite the same thing.
The question was asked at the July 19th meeting of the commission about sites of activity that interfered or disrupted the flow of water into a wetlands area, but was outside the buffer zone. And it was an inquisitive question in the context of trying of doing your mission of protecting wetlands. Well, is that in your purview? So the reason why the question was there is because in the first document that I read, it uses the word watersheds, not wetlands, which is an inclusive thing, which theoretically would include you doing evaluations or determinations outside that buffer zone if
Right.
it affected the
There
water.
is a difference between wetlands and watershed.
Right, that's the
Not
point
every
I'm making.
wetland is a watershed,
That's
basically.
That's what I'm saying. So that would imply that you would have authority outside the 100-foot
Well, the
buffer range.
mission statement from the MAC is poorly written when it refers to watershed protection.
Okay,
Philosophically, we do protect the watershed, and we protect the watershed by protecting the wetlands and its buffers. That is the domain of our authority according to
just
wetlands
inside
protection.
the buffer range.
That's right.
I was gonna say
If,
if you
if
don't-
now, let me go a little
Okay,
further.
good, yeah.
Surface water, all other things being equal, outside of the buffers area, is not something we can do anything about until it's a stream of some sort or a river, because then they become jurisdictional. But if it's just water flowing over the surface, we do not have authority to prevent changes to that.
Well, that would be one example, but there are other ways that water arrives or enters a wetland that can be disrupted outside that buffer zone, where you can basically just dry it up.
Right, if you're talking about groundwater, is that what you're asking?
Well, that would be one.
Well, groundwater we don't have jurisdiction over, and surface water we can under the right conditions.
That would be one.
Yeah, groundwater is not regulated.
I guess what, I understand what you're saying, but, so the conceptual question I was trying to ask was, is that true in that mission statement that you have authority over watersheds? And that would imply that you do have authority outside
That's,
the one.
understand, that's Mac's
So
mission
that's-
statement, that's not,
No, we do not have authority over wetlands. Let's make it simple.
Where does-
Watershed.
Watersheds, excuse me. We do not have authority over watersheds. That is the Watershed Protection Act, which is managed by the DCR, and wetlands are managed by conservation commissions.
and
Well,
DEP.
I did a search within the Wetlands Protection Act and the Wetlands Protection Act regulations and Massachusetts general law and the Code of Massachusetts regulations. And again, this is where I need help from you. I don't see where it says you have no authority outside the 100-foot range.
No,
I don't see where it says
because the law defines what our authority is. And the authority is within the wetlands and within the buffer zones. That's the only authority we have been granted. And we don't get to just take extra authority because we want it. To assert extra authority is illegal.
But you also have authority over open space and the natural resources of the community. Is that correct?
So, Peter, can I take this one
Please,
real quick?
feel free, Melissa.
So in 310 CMR and 10.02 is our statement of jurisdiction, and it talks about our areas subject to protection and areas subject to regulation, and it talks about activities within those areas subject to protection and then activities within those buffer zones. So our areas subject to protection are our bank, our freshwater wetlands, any coastal wetlands, and then our other inland wetlands, along with the land subject to flooding, riverfront area, etc. The activities that are subject to those regulations are anything that which will remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area is subject to regulation. And so those are if we were to alter the wetland directly. And then our next section in 10.02 B is the activities within the buffer zone. And it talks about that any activity other than the minor activities that were listed above, proposed or undertaken within 100 feet of an area specified in 310 CMR 10.021A, which was what I read, the area subject to protection, that will alter them. So that's where that 100 feet comes in. And the only difference is that farther in when it talks about riverfront area, because riverfront area is 200 feet from the mean annual high water line of a perennial stream or a river. And that's because the riverfront area, that 200 strip, is considered a resource area itself. So it's kind of equivalent to to a wetland. So I think what you were talking about earlier is that if someone were to kind of block off water that's going to a stream and it dries up, if it's outside of the buffer zone, we, because that specific activity is happening outside of our area subject to protection and their associated buffer zones, we won't have direct jurisdiction over that. It's not until and unless we can have enough evidence to demonstrate that activities outside of that buffer zone, which would be outside of our jurisdictional areas, has directly altered a wetland. If we can prove that, then we can try and gain jurisdiction over the activity, but not just because there might be a presumption that, you know, this is outside the buffer zone and possibly could affect. It's not until we have the evidence that demonstrates that an area outside of our buffer zone, in that 10.02, alters the resource area to a point where, you know, we have a visible alteration, whether it has dried up or it's changed courses, it's eroded, something like that, that we can then talk about a violation or regulating the activities that led up to it. Does that maybe clarify things a little bit?
I'll have to look at 10.2. So that probably corresponds with what's in the Conservation Commission Act, HB 18.9, where it says promote natural resources, but the only place where it says regulatory is related to watersheds.
Well, so
open space is just
it's
planning, acquiring, managing.
And that's kind of so that's for the Conservation Commission as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's not our jurisdiction under the Wetlands Protection Act, because as a commission, yes, we can have interests in, you know, our mission statement can include the protection of watersheds, but that does not mean that we can enforce them under the Wetlands Protection Act, which is what our permits are through. We have other acts that we do that are separate from the Wetlands Protection Act, and maybe that's where some of the confusion comes, because yes, we do promulgate open space, but that isn't related to our Wetland Protection Act permits. That's just, we can have properties that are under the care and control of the CONCOM. Sometimes that comes through planning board subdivisions and open space development. Sometimes that's just from people wanting to donate land, or, you know, maybe it comes up that the town wants to purchase land. So there are interests. So we have a Conservation Commission Act that has those types of interests. And maybe that's where some of the confusion is, especially if you're reading the MACC handbook, because they kind of talk about what a Conservation Commission does with those things, but also it's a separate item when you talk about what the Conservation Commission does under the Wetlands Protection Act permitting process. So there is kind of two different ducks, but in our scope within those under the Wetland Protection Act, and the majority of the things we do with permits is a lot narrower than our overall goal that we can create as a commission.
Comes across like a general physician can do a physical exam, but a cardiologist can't.
Right. So kind of. So, but it's kind of, and that's kind of why we're working with the Open Space and Recreation Commission. We're updating our Open Space and Rec plan, considering making that, you know, a full-time committee so that we have more dedication to open space. You know, there are things that we would like to do that, yes, we can be charged to do under the Conservation Commission Act, but not under Wetlands Protection Act, which is what all of our permitting gets done and all of our enforcement is under.
Okay. At this last one, September 20th of this year, Conservation Commission meeting. Conservation Commission discussed the options of waivers and exemptions in addition to using economic costs as a metric for issuing waivers and exemptions. And again, this is where I kind of need some help from you and clarification, so I better understand. And the reason why I have some questions about is that Congress, there were congressional amendments ruled in 1982 to prevent economic costs and financial interests from entering into the discussions related to conservation of land, wildlife, and fisheries, because it constitutes a legal loophole that nullifies any of the acts in the conservation. So I could never find, and there probably is, I can't find in the Wetlands Protection Act or the regulations anywhere where it says things can be waived for economic and financial reasons. You can stomp all over the wetlands if it's a hardship.
Well,
And I can't,
if I can, I think you're missing a context of
Okay.
that discussion.
okay,
That discussion was specifically about what we want to put in our bylaws and regulations that we're going to pass. And so
right,
it is, and in fact, we didn't even say we're going to, we said this is a topic for future discussion. And that's the entirety of that.
right. And Joe, you did mention you had some reservations, as long as it doesn't come in conflict with the regulations. You had some concerns about that. So, I
When
mean,
you
for
mentioned-
example,
When you mention Congress
yeah,
passing a law, right, we're established by state law. We only exist by virtue of Massachusetts law. And that's it. Whatever the state decides to incorporate, if they want to look at congressional.
oh no,
things,
I
okay.
understand that, but that was the basis for my confusion.
We're
It's
established
like-
by state law, so taking things from Congress and kind of bringing them over to here is
But this
a
is
little
a,
missing it,
right,
off the
but
target.
you're a conservation commission, and there are certain concepts, major concepts, that are important, that really need to be addressed, and that's a
Oh,
major one.
absolutely.
That's a major one.
Absolutely.
I have a comment. You said something about cardiologists. Can they do physical?
No, I said it was, what they're discussing,
It sounds
it
like
sounds like a regulation that says the GP can do a physical exam, but your cardiologist, so you can't.
Is there a regulation that says that? Yes or no?
No, it was an analogy.
Oh no, I'm just asking. Like currently, right now, there's no
No,
correct.
There isn't.
So that doesn't mean that they couldn't do it. What it means is it's a specialty. Each person has what they specialize in, and from what I'm hearing, from a public perspective, it sounds like they have things that they specifically do.
right, but the context of that was related to the mission statement from the Association of Conservation Commissions, which is directly related to this panel.
Well, yes and no.
We're not established by the MACC.
We are not bound to anything the.
It was
ACC
related to
says.
the Act, the Conservation Commission Act, HB 18.9.
Which again is not what we issue our permits under. It's just that's how were originally established in the 70s before we had any regulations to issue any decisions. So when we act as just kind of a general conservation commission, we can do events like if we wanted to actively, go out and hold events for, watershed protection or educational events, as we've kind of tried to release some documents, and that's what we're starting to do. It's the educational side, but when we enforce our permits and decisions, we can only consider what is under 10.02 in that statement of jurisdiction, which, unfortunately has a lot less of some of those stipulations, or they have to overcome a certain amount of disturbance before we can consider it. So we have an overarching theme, but when it comes to permits, we are much narrow in our scope than we would like to be, and what our overall mission statement applies to.
Again, what that comes across like, the way it reads to me is you have, let's say I'm just picking something out of there because we already had an analogy, you have the Massachusetts Association of Physicians. And then you have the Rutland Association, but we're not going to do it the way the rest of the state does it. We don't care what their act is, we're going to do it this way here in Rutland.
No, so
That's the way it comes across. When you tell me that, that's the way it comes across.
No. So MACC is more of an educational in there to help and support conservation and help forward regulation, etc. They're not anyone who creates regulations. They're simply a support mechanism for towns and cities who need help and for some education. We pay dues to them to attend their yearly conferences and to help ourselves be educated throughout the year. But they don't create any, they're just simply informational, educational for us.
And so they said the general, and you guys have a very specific.
Again, I was referring to the act. The act.
Right, so the Conservation Commission Act is just how we were initially enacted, but we only regulate under 310 CMR 10.0 for the Wetlands Protection Act.
Which is specific, right?
Right,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I guess the other, just to finish, the other,
we
just
don't
the,
have that many teeth.
It's very specific, I think,
Right.
right? Just like COVID guidelines, the CDC would say this, and there was specific things around each state and each local community, am I right?
Yeah, it's up to the states to adopt it,
Right.
even.
So there is that general broader criteria that you all fall under that big umbrella. But
Right.
in the purview, there's some specific items that they have limited oversight over. And that's my understanding. I'm not saying that's what you do, and correct me if
well,
I'm wrong.
it's, to me, I mean, that's the act from the state, and it's basically like, we're not gonna do it that way. We're gonna do it this way.
Understand, MACC is Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners. Okay, it's an association.
Right.
In my business, I ran wire factories. Okay, and I was a member of the Wire Association.
Right.
All right, and they put on trade shows, which I
Right.
participated in and attended, in and out of the country, but it's an association. The Wire Association does not regulate what size wire I can
Right.
use in your
Again,
house.
I was referring to the act. I keep going
Right.
back to it. I was referring to the act.
Right, and Melissa's already explained to
Right.
you that it's 10,
Mhm.
It's true, but you also keep quoting the MAC
Missions.
mission statement. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Well, it's in
Which is
the
also
act.
specific to the MAC people, right?
It's in the act.
yeah, it's an association, it's not a legislative body.
But that statement's from the act. So, I just did, and I don't want to keep you gentlemen any longer, but
Yeah, I think we
The-
need to,
the, even as, it's just a general observation. Like, for example, this evening, there was a case about, do we have to replenish what we've destroyed? There was that issue. We want to build right up to the 0 point on wetlands, which is, we were told it was stated in that September 19th meeting, we never do that. Look at the tape. We never do that. And then tonight, it's okay. Regulations, smegulations.
No, it's
You
not
know?
regulation schmegulation. It's the
Well-
regulations specify the rules we can put in place
Right.
to allow to
Right.
allow activities to take place. It is our general policy that we will not,
I'm bringing the chairs back.
that we do not let developers fill wetlands or get closer than 15 feet to the wetlands. That is our general policy.
Right.
Because we don't have a bylaw.
But that is not
It's
a
not a law.
regulation, that is not anything we can strongly enforce. And by virtue of the Wetlands Protection Act and its regulations, there are guidelines that say,
There are.
that say, if you're going to fill, these are the things you need to do.
Right, if you're within 20 to 25 feet. And then there's a separate section if you're between 50 and 100, or if you're between 20 to 25.
There are even things about being in the wetland.
Right,
And that's what we were talking about today.
right.
and that's
So
why I have to
we don't
find
like
that
to do it
additional
as a
funding.
rule. As a rule, we would keep people out. But there are some properties that would make that lot unbuildable if we were to try to enforce it that strongly. And that yields lawsuits that the town will invariably lose if we tried to do that.
Well, then, why are you here? It seems like
No, because the point is not to
it
say.
seems like you almost everything that is asked for, you find a way of making it happen, no matter what it is. It's the way it comes across looking at these meetings and listening to them. I've never heard anybody say, no, you can't do that. It's like, well.
It has nothing to do with the tax base. It has everything to do with what a property owner should be allowed to do with his property in ways that do not adversely impact the wetlands in toto.
Right.
So sometimes the only way to get to allow a project to proceed is to allow some wetlands destruction and replication elsewhere so that on balance there isn't damage to the
Right.
ecology.
And I thought that was managed pretty well done. At first, before he got to that, I'm thinking, I'm not sure about that. But when they reclaimed that other area, that's a good solution.
And by the way,
You know what?
there are lots of things you don't hear because it doesn't take place in public meeting.
Oh.
Julian and I and Joe had this discussion about how he's going to do it and where and what some of the alternatives are on the site walk.
Yeah.
And that's not part of this public meeting, this public forum. And so most of the time, we will already know what's going on and understand the alternatives and in fact understand, and the developer's going to know what the limits are well before he or she applies to us for any permitting activity.
The fellow you saw speaking here tonight for that one project, like, he is a wetlands scientist,
Mhm.
all right? He already knows all of the laws that we can enforce, but he also knows that on that particular one, he has to go see DCR because he's in an ORW, which is a different designation, okay? So he has an additional one. He also, the 401 water quality cert
Mass DEP.
has to go in, all right, which is not administered by this commission. That gets super technical, and it goes into Army Corps of Engineers, if I remember correctly.
Is that, I thought it was through DEP.
No, I'm pretty sure 401's ACE.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah, because
That
it was
goes-
at over
And
60 years.
again,
Yeah.
it's fairly common knowledge that there are a lot of properties that never should have been built.
Well, you say that, but you
Because
weren't
of-
here for him. You could have been here and brought it up.
Well, it's sprinkled throughout the years. It's actually fairly common knowledge. I can,
That's an opinion.
well, that's what I've been told
Yeah,
by,
among some people, it would be
Related
called
to-
common knowledge, sure.
yeah.
There,
And so,
there are people
so
who
the
You get five
concern
people
is,
together,
I
that's
guess
common
the
knowledge.
concern is that the way this seems to unfold is people are interested in a piece of property, even though there's wetland on it. It's like, let's give it a shot. Instead of,
No.
maybe we shouldn't get this. Maybe we should go somewhere else.
No, that's,
Actually, there are, I know of a particular request before the planning board where they tried to avoid wetlands, but that created a zoning problem. And so they're going to have to go, or at least to do all the plans, all the permitting to go through wetlands, even though that's not their intent. It's one of those, sometimes people are forced to do things.
I just don't understand why why individuals would even mess with it.
Well,
Why would you do
that's-
it?
Well, it's also important to remember that by the Wetlands Protection Act, by right, as long as they follow some pretty basic requirements, they are allowed under the Wetlands Protection Act to alter and fill up to 5,000 square feet as long as they provide a one-to-one replication underneath the act by right. There are some guidance that you need to follow, but we cannot reasonably deny a project that is under that threshold, provided they give us some replication, at least at a one-to-one replication rate. I think Jared mentioned it earlier, we ask for more if we can. Unfortunately, this site, because of the slope, it would actually do more damage because they'd be taking out more fill and disturbing way more area than it would actually benefit. But in other sites, like we talked about their certificate of compliance before, when they, were asking if they could maybe take away some of the replication, and that's very contentious for us. If we got more originally, it's very hard for us to give that up. And because we don't have a local bylaw, as long as we mentioned we have a 15 to 20 foot no touch policy, but by law, they can go right up to the wetland edge and or fill, up to 5,000 square feet with us, and us being able to approve it with as many conditions as we can reasonably apply, which a lot of them is how much the applicant, is willing to work with us. And they also, need to provide some sort of alternatives analysis. So a lot of it, is stuff that we get in the applications that we review beforehand. And so it's not necessarily outwardly discussed at the committee meetings, which, it's good for us to now kind of reflect on that and realize that there is a lot that goes unsaid, but it is very site specific. Wetland replication is not an easy thing to do. But we have tried, introducing native plants into some of our restoration mixes. We're doing a lot more on the follow-up side, to make sure that things are built in compliance and closing permits out. So, there has been things that, is doing, but it is important to remember that by right under the Wetlands Protection Act, we not have to approve, but as long as they meet those minimum stipulations outlined for wetland fill and replication, then with conditioning that approval, they are allowed to do that. If they go over that, then it gets to a more state level and a larger filing. But it's very limiting, without a wetlands bylaw to kind of wrap that in, and that's why we're trying to make that bylaw so we can have those more stricter restrictions and come in with that open space aspect in watershed where we don't have that right now, because that's the mission under the Conservation Commission Act and not the Wetlands Protection Act.
So the concern there is that, if you're a diehard conservationist, you just are a rabid bulldog conservationist. Say you have 100 acres of land that's wetland.
Yep.
Okay. You build one residential property on there and you're under the threshold.
Mm-hmm.
The area golden.
Yep.
You subdivide that same 100 yards and they're all under the threshold. How much did you lose?
No.
No, so there is specific actual regulations
Where does it
within
say
the
that?
Act that prohibit that. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Where
So
is
you
prohibited.
do have
that
something.
prohibited?
I
310 CMR
I
10.
can't remember the specific one where it is right now.
Which one is it,
I apologize.
Jared?
It's in 310 CMR 10. It's near the beginning.
Yeah, it is within the Wetlands Protection
Yeah,
Act, yes.
it's in there.
So they couldn't I thought you said that you can't prevent somebody
No,
from
they
buying
can't
it.
aggregate by subdividing.
They can't
If they
aggregate
take
more
a
than
big piece of
5,000.
property, build one house and take 4,000 square feet of wetland,
Right.
okay? Then they subdivide again, all right, and they come to us and say, we're gonna build another house and we're gonna take 4,000 square feet. That doesn't fly because you have to take it in the
It's the
aggregate, whatever the
aggregate of the property
original,
as a whole at
Well,
the time.
whatever the original property was. The 5,000 applies to that whole thing.
So
you
it's
can't
the,
take
it's the
little
state of
pieces
the
here
property
and there.
when the
So how does
when the
that work if
permits
it's
is done.
50 versus 100 acres? And
Say that
whether,
again?
like if someone has a 100-acre parcel and they want to subdivide it into two-acre parcel.
then they would more than likely do that division before they would do any wetlands permitting, so that they're then individual lots. If they get the wetlands permit as a 100-acre or 50-acre parcel, then the aggregation rules work for the entirety of that parcel at that time.
That's what it's called, is it aggregation?
Aggregation,
It's
yes.
aggregation regulation?
It's not an aggregation regulation, but it's there
It
are regulations
generically
concerning the
speaking,
aggregation
it's
of wetlands impact.
And that would restrict how much of the wetland would be
Free.
infringed upon?
Yes.
5,000
Or free, or
total.
remain free? Okay.
Correct, free,
So
5,000.
it would be that 5,000 square foot threshold for the whole lot.
Before,
Not for the
No, but yeah, no
individual.
matter how many times they subdivided
Not the
after that
subdivision.
point.
Correct. Yep,
And that's independent of how large the wetland area is?
Yes,
correct,
Yeah.
So even if it doesn't matter what size it is?
correct.
correct. Because the
Correct.
amount of wetlands impact is the amount of wetlands impact.
The amount of wetlands on that
On
particular
that
property.
before it has to be replicated.
Mhm.
Before it has to be replicated.
Oh,
So,
no, it's
So
replication.
what you're saying then is there's no difference in how much wetland would be infringed upon, whether on that 100 acres there was one residence or 20?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as when it was permitted for wetlands, that it was an entire, complete parcel. It's whatever the parcel is that's permitted for the activity.
It talks about it in 10.58, 2, the scope of alternatives. It talks about the area under construction is limited to the lot, so the area for consideration for practical alternatives is limited to the lot, the subdivided lots, and any adjacent lots formerly or presently owned by the same owner. So even if they own like a lot next door and they were gonna do that too, that all gets wrapped into one. So it's the wetland itself, they can alter up to 5,000 square feet and replicate it, or 10,000, or 10%, whichever is greater of if it's riverfront area, which is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because that's what I mean, that's that 200 feet. But a wetland itself is probably 85% of what we see in subdivisions, would be that 5,000 square feet.
So
it's
they
that,
all share that division, that their own portion of the 5,000?
Yep, so they can, and there's no discrepancy in that 0 to 100-foot buffer zone, so that's not the 5,000, it's just if they were to alter the wetland itself. So if they were to fill the
Oh, it
wetland
ignores
for,
the
say, the
buffer.
roadway or something. Mhm.
Okay.
So that's our one saving grace.
Thank you for your patience.
Yep.
Appreciate your help. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anytime.
Well, especially next meeting when I won't be here.
That would mean.
Ducking out.
Yes. Oh, to quote myself from the last time we had this discussion. Okay, we're not doing wetlands tonight. Not only are we over long, I didn't do the prep work I was supposed to do, so.
okay.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Come on, let's discuss it for 10 more minutes. Let's piss off the video people even more. Roll call.
Gentilucci, aye.
Clock eye.
Langer, aye.
Self-lie.
Stands eye.
Crane on.
Excuse
We're
me.
adjourned
Bye,
at
guys.
8:12. Thanks very much.